World of Martial Arts TV. And today we are with one of the supremos, in my opinion, of the martial arts and movie world. Keith, it is an honor to talk to you today. I have loved your work from the first time I saw you in China O'Brien. That split double kick that you do in that is just awesome. I mean, it just blew me away. So, you know,
Thank
and
you.
know, the little bandera that you had on the top of your head, you know, I remember going away going, I've got to wear a bandera now. It's got to look like Keith, you know. Might have been Bruce Lee before, but now
my bandana is in the wash right now. Normally I'd be wearing
it. So Keith, just to sort of like get people, as it's World of Martial Arts TV, and they might not know your fantastic history. I mean, Cynthia Rothrock put you way up there and said you were absolutely amazing. And I think it would be best to come from you. First of all, what we like to ask is, how did you get into martial arts? What attracted you to it?
Well, it was actually, you know, I had been bullied a little bit. And, you know, I was about, you know, when I started in 1973, and, you know, there weren't as many kids doing martial arts yet because it was more of an adult thing back then, because it was before Power Rangers, before the Karate Kid. So there weren't as many kids as adults in it at the time, but I was a fan of Bruce Lee, and that's why I wanted to start in Kung Fu, because that's what I thought he did. And so, you know, and then, you know, as time went on, I learned that, you know, I mean, he did a number of things, you know, but which I became very interested in doing also, but sort of, he was my hero. And so I wanted to do what he was doing. And I think he was just a brilliant guy, you know, like way ahead of his time, and got so much accomplished in such a short period of time. You know, it was amazing the things that he was thinking about at his age, his young age, you know. So I'm still a big fan. And that's why I think so many martial artists strive to be in the movies, is because that's where Bruce Lee was. And, you know, Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal.
So did you bother with any of was the Wing Chun around? Or, I mean, you had Guru Danny Nasanto in LA. So did you bother going training with them or doing any of the Wing Chun stuff?
I'm actually from Seattle.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, yeah. And I didn't really understand that there were so many different, quote unquote, styles of Kung Fu, you know, and, you know, like Wing Chun or Hung Ga and Shaolin, and so I didn't really know the difference. I just thought it was Kung Fu, and that was the style, you know, at that time. And so I end up just looking in the yellow pages in the phone book, and I started calling Kung Fu schools. And the one that was the most expensive was in Chinatown, and it happened to be Hung Ga. It was the Seattle Kung Fu Club. And my dad took me down there, and we went up these stairs, and it was classic, you know, like right out of a novel or something, you know. And there was, you know, like everything looked very Kung Fu. And, you know, I could hear the people training inside. You know, you could hear, huh, ha, huh, you know, and we knock on the door, and they open the door like a crack, you know, and I said, can we come in and watch a class? No, we don't let people watch the class. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a bummer. And so we just left. And then I saw my Sifu, Roger Tung, doing a demonstration in right near the University of Washington, which is in Seattle. They had this thing called the University Street Fair each year. Yeah. And he was doing a demonstration there, and he had some young guys in there that were my age, you know, like about 13, and they were breaking boards. And I just thought it was the coolest thing I ever saw. Plus he had an accent like Bruce Lee. And And so I thought he sounded like Bruce Lee, he looked like Bruce Lee, he was fast, and I was just like, so we signed up there, and it was $22 a month back then. That was a big nut for my dad to crack back then,
Yeah.
But now people pay $200-300 a month, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you actually know that Bruce was buried in Seattle?
Yes,
And did you
been
know
there.
did you know about Taki Kimura at the time, or did you bother with that?
I found out about him later.
Yeah.
I didn't really know at the time that I didn't really know that the history of Bruce Lee with being in Seattle and training with Taki and the other guys that he trained with there, and him having a school there. I mean, there's a lot of history in Seattle right there. And I found out that he actually visited our next door neighbor one time.
Oh, wow.
But before we were even neighbors, he had come and trained in their backyard and stuff. And then a lot of the places I used to play with my friends at the University of Washington, and I saw that he trained at this one place where we used to go play, and he had trained there earlier,
Wow.
and it was just sort of gave me chills. And he also taught a philosophy class at Garfield High School, where my dad went. My dad went to Garfield High School, and so did Quincy Jones and Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix and Quincy Jones went to the same high school, and Bruce Lee taught philosophy there. So when you walk in the front, they have a mural on the wall, of paintings of these guys, and it was just kind of blew me away. And my dad went there, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So Cindy was saying that you went through championships in wushu. I think you eventually in and stuff. And I think somewhere along the line, just skipping along there, George Chung beat you one year, and that the next year you came firing through, and you were martial arts master of the year. So
that sounds like a rumor. That sounds like a.
Tell us the truth. Tell us the truth, Keith.
I never lost to George. No, I'm just kidding. That sounds like it could be true. It was just a very long time ago. So yeah, probably was true. And we competed against each other quite a bit, and Cynthia too, when they, like in a Forms Grand Championship, what they would do is, from all the different divisions. So, ultimately whoever won the women's division would be against the men's division. And I would usually be in the Chinese Forms division, or the soft style, they called it. And I tried to make it as little soft as possible, though. And then they would have weapons divisions, and so ultimately you end up against each other in a grand championship, because George would be in the open division with the music, and he had these fantastic forms that he did. And he was actually, pretty big inspiration to me back in those days, because he was out there before I was, and very creative, very talented, as was Cynthia, and so yeah, I got to hang out with them quite a bit back in the day, and it was great. It was great.
How did the martial arts movie things? Because you didn't actually, your first movie wasn't, or by the IMDb, your first movie wasn't China O'Brien, which we want to talk extensively about. The first film was like Picasso something or other. So
Picasso Trigger, which is actually the name of a fish, a fish that you might see when you're snorkeling,
Yeah.
And that was a funny story. I love that story actually, because how you meet a lot of people who are trying to find a way to get into the business. And I was going to an acting studio where I was trading. I would teach a class there, a martial arts class there, to trade for my tuition to be in the actor studio. Like sometimes they have something like sometimes they might have dance, or they usually have some kind of movement, class at a acting studio. And Ernie Reyes Snr had taught there before me. And that was kind of how I found out about that workshop. I think I found out from him, or I found out that he was going there. And then when I went there, he had already left. I think they were doing that TV show Sidekicks.
Yeah.
Or I think that was the name of it. And so they had left, and they were very busy. And then they went on to do the Last Dragon, which was awesome, and Surf Ninjas. But I went there, and that was the same acting studio. It was called the Vincent Chase Workshop. And Michael Biehn, I don't know if you remember him from the original Terminator.
Yeah, I know Michael Biehn, yeah.
I ended up training him for years. I trained him when he was getting ready to film The Abyss. And he stayed on for years because he played a lot of action roles. So he wanted
He was amazing in Aliens. I mean, he was absolutely
yeah. He's a really good actor. Bill Paxton was also a student there.
Oh yeah,
and he was also in Aliens, and unfortunately he passed away, which was just so shocking to me. But anyway, he had a lot of prominent actors that studied there, and oddly enough, the very first job that I got, I think it was before I did Picasso Trigger, was it was a Gatorade commercial.
Right.
And it was a national commercial, so it was kind of a big deal. And I went to the audition, and there was like hundreds of people there trying out, and Ernie Reyes Snr was trying out also, and the two of us ended up getting that. And so we did that commercial together, and it played during the World Series. And so, for that one day of work, I ended up making like $15,000 or something. Back then, that was a good chunk of change for me, And so I was really stoked about it, and that's how I got into the Screen Actors Guild also. And so it worked out really well. But Picasso Trigger, I haven't forgotten. I was in that acting class at Vincent Chase Workshop, and there was a kid there who was dating this girl whose father was a director for the NFL, but he wanted to direct feature films too. And so he was doing like every year would do a movie with these Playboy Bunnies, and it was sort of they were like spy movies, and it was just fun, And the audition was really funny. Maybe you guys will think this is funny. They gave me a little thing they call them sides, which is your lines, and I had like 2 sentences on there or something. And I go there, and they see me, and the guy goes, say hey, and I go hey, and he goes, can you do a backflip? And I go yes, and he goes, you got the part. that was the audition. I said I must have nailed that audition, man. So anyway, and it filmed in Hawaii, which was awesome.
Wow.
Because all expense paid trip to Hawaii, plus made some money. Got to hang out with Playboy Bunnies, and it couldn't have been better, actually. So
it's a shame that film doesn't appear on our DVD range. It looks very interesting, should I say? But anyway.
There's a lot of very interesting camera work.
Very, very, yes. Interesting. Yes, we should say that. So, at what point did Fred Weintraub get in touch with you for China O'Brien, or had Cynthia put a good word in for you? How did that happen?
Actually, Dave Cater from Inside Kung Fu magazine. He was the editor of Inside Kung Fu.
Yeah, I remember.
I got on a team called the Atlantic World Karate Team, and we traveled all over the world, man. It was awesome. And one of the cool things was some of the trips Dave Cater came along on. So I got to know him pretty well, and he saw me compete a lot. And Fred Weintraub called him on the phone and asked him if he knew anyone who would be right for that particular that Dakota role, and he recommended me. And one day I came home from working out, and my phone rang, and I picked it up, and he goes, "Is this Keith?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "This is Fred Weintraub." And I go, "What?" I was like, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a joke or something. And he says, "I want you to come over I've got a role that I'm interested in interviewing you for, you know? And so I said, well, let me take a shower. I just worked out. He goes, no, I want you to come over right now. So I went over in my same workout. I had Kung Fu pants on. I was ready, you know, and I get there and it's him with his daughter, Sandra.
Yeah.
And they, you know, said, so I sit down, they say, so we hear you do martial arts. And I stood up and I was like, you want to see some? I was like, just so pumped up, you know, so amped up, ready to go, fired, you know? And so, and that, you know, the rest was just kind of history. It just, you know, we got to know each other in a few interviews. And then the next thing I knew, I was up there shooting the movie with Cynthia and Richard. So
how did you find that? Because Cindy said that one minute it was going to be a 2-picture deal, and then suddenly you were doing films back to back, and you were having to learn lines from one thing and then go lines for another film. It sounded totally. I mean, to say it comes out so well, how did you cope with it?
Well, didn't the director from Lord of the Rings copy us and do the same thing? Yeah, you know, it wasn't like, I didn't find that very baffling or confusing to switch. You know, for me, I was so green anyway at the time. You know, okay, so this is China O'Brien 2. It's like, what is it, like a year later or something like that, you know? And so, you know, they just changed me into a different colored shirt and I was ready to go, you know? And it was really nice though. I don't know if you've heard of Park City, Utah. It's a
I've heard of it. Yeah,
and it's beautiful. It's like 7,000. We were at 7,000 or 8,000 feet of elevation, so the air was really thin. It took me a while to get used to that, but it was just a beautiful place to be in the summer, you know, where, you know, there was no snow or anything. It's just picturesque, you know. It's above Salt Lake City and it's just beautiful. And so it was just a really awesome place to film. I mean, anywhere you went, you would get beautiful shots. So it was just like, you know, it was just really pristine and just a great place to film.
What was this with the false hand scenario? What was that all about? You remember? I think your hand. I don't think.
Oh yeah.
What was that? When did that come in?
We were in a stage where we were rehearsing, choreographing stuff, and interviewing local people that were going to come on as stuntmen to be in the fights and stuff like that. And so we were holding those kind of auditions, but they were also shooting a making of. And so just as a promotional thing, they wanted Cynthia and I can't remember if Richard went down that. It was a slide. They called it the Alpine slide or something. And it was actually a way for you to kind of go down the slope when there was no snow. There were these carts that went in these cement things down. And I was bombing down that thing and my hand hit a rock on the side of the path. And it broke my thumb right here by my wrist.
Oh, wow.
And it broke it all the way through where the bone was, you know, separated from the other piece and in a different direction. It wasn't that painful. It was painful. And so, you know, we went and they said, you know, you're going to have to get surgery because we're going to have to put pins in there to get the bones to hold so they'll heal correctly, you know. And I was so bummed and I was like, wow. And so they scheduled the surgery and they put me in a cast. And I went back and they were all worried that I wasn't going to be able to do you know, they thought they were going to have to replace me. And I just showed them, I said, hey, look, I can do everything that I could do, you know, without a broken thumb or with a broken thumb, doesn't matter. And that scene that I did on top of the cars where, you know, I fall on the car, I'm doing a kip up and I do a flip off the car. I have the thing on my hand that they built into the story that my hand got crushed by the bad guys. And so that was kind of cool. It made the character like a more sympathetic character, I think. But that fight was done before the surgery.
Right.
And then I went and got the surgery, and it ended up not being an issue at all, and it healed. And it wasn't really a big thing, but it did change the story, which was kind of cool. It ended up being kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. That's great to get that little bit, because I always wondered where that came in and why. That was fantastic.
And the prop guy who designed that thing, my wrist, the story was that was to pull the clutch. On my motorcycle. So
well, it was as I say, it worked perfectly. And you just say it was a nice sort of like change that actually gave the story a little bit of a more, and it made you more interested, because I think it nearly says, I don't know if it says on the beginning of it, introducing Keith Cooke. I think I mean, so even though you'd done Picasso's Trigger, that was the film that they said, this is Keith Cooke, and now come on, now I've got to ask the question. I've come into before. How difficult is it to do that double kick, mate? It's just amazing.
It's actually a triple kick. It's actually a triple kick.
There you go. Go on.
It's a side kick.
Yeah.
Twist kick. Like a reverse round kick, and then a round kick coming across from the foot that did the side kick. So it's like 1, 2, 3, like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that was one of the things. I've talked about this a little bit before, that I just feel like going to China and training with the wushu people there was huge for me, because they have this rhythm when they jump. And I had an opportunity to train with them like at least three different times for extended periods of time. And you start to pick up on their rhythm. And one of the things that I realized was in a jump kick, they start their kick really early, and it makes it look like they're jumping really high, because a lot of times they've already done the kick and they're still going up, and so it's like a rhythm thing, whereas I felt like a lot of the people here would try to float up into the air and then throw the kick. And I think when you're doing double and triple kicks, you got to get the kick off early. You got to be quick, and so that worked for me really well, being able to train with those guys, and then having the challenge of doing double and triple kicks in the air. You want to be early, and you want to have good rhythm. It takes good rhythm,
What did you find most rewarding for working on China O'Brien 1 and 2? What was the most rewarding, do you feel?
Well, I think it was to be able to work with the stuntmen from Hong Kong, and work with Robert Klaus and Fred Weintraub. Like, it was such an honor. I felt like like I had woke up in a dream or something like that. Like a dream had come true. I'm working for the guys who produced and directed my favorite movie. A movie that inspired me to get into martial arts. And it just doesn't get any better than that. And then to get the experience of working and seeing the way, the people who work with Jackie Chan work, and just the work ethic and the professionalism, that they're always ready, just like that. They're ready, And so I think that was all, really inspiring. And it was so cool to meet Richard Norton, and because I had known who he was from movies that he'd done previously to that, and then working with Cynthia, it's cool to, it was just I was on cloud nine, I was just beside myself.
Talking about Robert Klaus and Fred Weintraub, did the conversation, because you a bigger Bruce Lee fan, just like I am, massive Bruce Lee fan beyond. So did they talk about Bruce much? Did you have any conversations with them about Bruce Lee? Did they reveal anything about Bruce?
A lot of times he would come up for comparisons, about speed and stuff like that, and that they wanted me to try to have that kind of speed and explosiveness, that Bruce had. And that's a huge undertaking, obviously, and a huge challenge. I think, and also it came up, how did Bruce Lee die? And because there was a lot of mysteriousness around it, but Fred said it was an aneurysm. That's what I remember him telling me back then. And it seems like, there was edema, and, but, it was just great to work with those guys and to have that inspiration of Bruce just right there, with you when you're filming. And I definitely felt that because it was, Fred and Robert. So
you were in a situation where it was fresh to you. Was there a bit of a downside to working with China O'Brien, or was you just upbeat all the time? Was it like, oh, I'm standing around a lot, or did you find something? Because these were the big two movies you were working on. How did you find that, or was it just positive all the way?
It was a really positive experience. Yeah, and I think one of the things is, when you have an opportunity, when I have an opportunity like that, I want to, give it everything I have. And I think when I'm in that kind of situation where I feel supremely challenged, I'm just supremely focused on doing the best job that I can do. And how can that ever be boring or negative? I teach a lot of kids, and I always say, hey, trying hard is never boring,
No.
and being the best you can be is never boring. And I just felt like it was just like a great experience for me, and I wanted to learn everything that I could, and I still feel that way now when I go work on things, so.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for Eureka to deliver the Blu-ray of China O'Brien 1 and 2, which has been released over here. So we will see you in glorious Technicolor and in Blu-ray. So that's going to be absolutely fantastic. Now, your following film to this, I love this film, but I'd love to know what your take on it. The King of Kickboxers. How did we get in that? And you were working with a different set of people in that one. So, how did it come about, and what did you feel about it?
That was pretty normal process because I just went on an audition.
All right.
I can't remember how I got the call. I can't remember if my agent got me that interview or it was somebody I knew, or I can't even remember now. But I remember when I went there, I saw Don Wilson in the lobby. And so it was a fantastic audition though, because Lauren Avedon was there. He was in the audition, and NG, the producer, was there, and I'm pretty sure Keith Strandberg was there too. And we read some of the dialogue and stuff like that, and then NG said, "Hey, I want to see some of your fighting," And so Lauren, he goes, "Lauren, stand up," And so this is completely spontaneous. It's not, there's no choreography at all. And so I'm thinking, this is my audition, And so I just went at him, man. I just went at him with everything that I had. I mean, I was really whipping kicks right by his head, kicking him on the legs, because I was like, this is a Thai kickboxing movie. So I was kicking him with rear leg round kicks on the legs, and he was just moving around trying to make sure he didn't get killed, And he was such a gentleman about it, but I went at him, So that was fun.
Was it another enjoyable experience, would you say?
I'm sorry?
Would you say King of the Kickboxers was as another enjoyable
very much
experience?
So. Very much so. And I had that stroke of luck to work with Corey Ewan. Who the only thing he directed in the whole movie was my fight. and I loved that experience. I just got lucky. What can I say? I got lucky, and he would say, we had very little time to shoot that, very little rehearsal time. He would say, okay, Keith, there's going to be these 3 guys are going to come at you right here. What do you want to do to them? What would you do to them? And I say, well, how about if I kick this guy? Bop, 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 bop. They wanted a lot of kicking, and he said, great, let's do it. And then, okay, now these guys are going to come at you here. Can you jump up and kick this guy and this guy? And he would just ask me if I could do that, and I say, yeah, I can do that. And that's the way that fight got put together. And so I feel like like he choreographed the whole fight, like in a really subtle way. Like he wanted me to feel like I had input, And so it was really masterful the way that he did that. And everybody got so quiet on the set when he took over. I just felt like there was a lot of respect, from the crew and the stuntman, And another interesting little tidbit is when he asked me to do the triple kick at the end, which was three straight kicks with the bottom of my feet into this guy's chest. First, I was kicking a Thai guy, and one of the people that they hired locally there, and he couldn't stay there. I want the kick to look powerful, so I want to really kick. And after the first 2 kicks, he would be gone. And so I couldn't get the 3rd kick in. And so one of the Hong Kong guys, and so we tried it like 3 or 4 times, and he couldn't stand there. And one of the Jackie Chan stunt team guys goes, I can do it. First take, bam, bam, bam. He takes them. And this guy, like, I started up on a balcony in that fight scene too. And the ground was very hard packed dirt. It was like somebody's driveway or something. It was as hard as cement, And this guy fell off that balcony, like, I don't know how many times, and landed right on his side I don't know how he did it. Those guys are so tough. I was kind of blown away. So
what I wanted to ask you next is, you worked, barring from another film in between, you worked on a film called Heat Seeker with Gary Daniels.
Yeah.
Now Gary's from our side of the country, of water, should I say? So, how was it like working with Gary on that movie? And I love that movie, of course, but it was kind of a very cage fighting kind of thing to me, if I remember it rightly.
Yeah, and it was sort of like a cyborg movie.
Yeah.
And Albert Pion, in fact, directed the movie Cyborg with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
And he was the director of this movie. And it turns out that I knew the like the executive producer of the movie from TriStar Entertainment. I had been teaching his son, and he didn't like the movie. But I loved working with Gary. I wish I could have worked with him more. I think we could have done some really good stuff together. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a chance to work together again. I would love that. He's a tremendous, he has, let's say, tremendous presence. And he's, as far as, martial arts actors go, he's one of the best, and he's a tremendous martial artist. So it's just, I got really lucky again, that because they had somebody else cast in that role. I don't remember who it was. But he dropped out, and that's how I got that role.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that why I mentioned Gary is I know Gary is a big Bruce Lee fan.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the reason that he got into movies was through Bruce Lee. So,
right.
He actually is in one of the what we had over here, which was a Bruce Lee sort of like secret society fan club, and he was a member. And we've got pictures of him and stuff like that. Gary was intense Bruce Lee and still is. You know, he loves Bruce Lee. So with you saying you love Bruce Lee, I thought maybe you'd talk Bruce a bit.
Yeah, well, he is a tough dude too. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a real fighter, and
Oh yeah.
I love that about him. He's kind of dangerous, you know, and I like that. But like I said, I wish we, you know, I almost wish, you know, like one of the things that okay, so I'm going to get negative, okay, is
Okay.
that you know, the way Albert Pion was shooting that movie, like you talk about, and I know Albert Pion has passed away, and you know, rest in peace. I'm going to be critical of him though on the way he did those movies. Was he wouldn't do coverage on the fight scenes, so you end up doing master after master. You don't know what camera you're playing to because he would have so many cameras. He would hide cameras in the audience, and he was trying to save time, you know, because that movie was an 11-day shoot. So that's really fast to shoot a feature film. I was in the script. I had 14 fights in 11 days, you know, and one of the days was in Rome, which was really great to get a trip to Rome. It's so beautiful. And but the 10 days, in the 10 days, I had supposedly 14 fights. And since he would shoot with so many cameras, I think it must have been very difficult for the editors, but it's very difficult as a screen fighter to do your best when you don't know which direction you're playing to, which camera you're playing to. And when they come in, they do the coverage. And that's what I like about the Hong Kong guys. You know, you don't do a lot of masters with those guys, you know. They're not going to use the master that much, you know. They're going to use it if they have to. Otherwise, they're going to use all their coverage, you know, where they do a lot of stuff with handheld cameras, steady cams, stuff like that. And so you get more pulled into the fights, because I felt like we did some really good fights in there, but I felt like the coverage wasn't there. And so you don't get as involved, you know, in the fights. And so I think that really hurt the movie, you know. I mean, after all, it was about fighting, you know.
And I absolutely agree with you, mate. Absolutely. I got to move you on quick here because this is a desperate scenario here, because I went to the premiere of these. For any gamers, you are the ultimate guy, aren't you? Because between Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat Annihilation, you played Reptile and Sub-Zero. Tell us about that. Come on, playing both the roles of the guys there. Wow. And a bit of CGI thrown in for you there. Fantastic.
Well, I had actually auditioned for Liu Kang. And obviously I didn't get the part. I got down to the last few people, definitely. And obviously Robin Shu got the role. And he's a good friend of mine, has been since like back in 1982, I think I met him. And we went to China together and trained, and we trained together a lot. Our teachers knew each other. Our martial arts teachers knew each other well. And so we would sort of have exchanges with their school and work out together a lot. And so we became friends, and they had filmed the whole movie. They had done it, the whole movie, and had been putting it out for test audiences, and everybody was saying, we want more action, we want more action. And so they built sets in hangars, excuse me, at the Van Nuys Airport here in Los Angeles. I can actually see that airport from my house. They did the reptile fight with Liu Kang, and then they did the scorpion fight with Johnny Cage after the fact, and added those fights to the movie. And they didn't spare any expense building those sets. They were beautiful. They were, and that was the most time I ever got to spend on one fight, you know, because the director had such a vision for the way he wanted things to look. he wanted to make sure that he had every shot from every angle that he had, that he wanted. And so we did, rehearsals, walkthroughs so many times. And I think, I'm really proud of that fight. I'm really proud of it. I'm really happy that, that's like, I wish I had an opportunity like that with Gary, Gary Daniels, where somebody is taking the care to make sure you get the coverage that you need, because I think we could have looked really good if we had that. And so this, Paul Anderson, the director, had a real vision, for the way he wanted this thing to look. And he wasn't going to cut any corners anywhere, And we had Jeff Imada. I've got some pretty cool behind the scenes photographs from that shoot. And just, it was really cool. And actually Robin ended up breaking his ribs, and that there's one place where I throw him and he's doing like a butterfly twist through the air, and he lands on a piece of the set and it cracked like 3 ribs.
Oh dear.
And he just had to keep going and be in pain, but he's a tough dude. So
Did you ever get to meet Christopher Lambert in that?
I didn't. No. Yeah, we weren't filming at the same time. But he added a lot to that film also. He's actually, he's got a really good sense of humor, I think.
Oh yeah.
And so he brought a lot to that film,
Yeah, he's a great guy. So because it's a gaming film, you know what I mean? It was a game, it still is a massive game, is Mortal Kombat. Do you get an awful lot of questions, or do people pull you out? We need you. Did you go?
Well, a couple of years ago, I started getting invited to cons, like Comic Cons.
Yeah.
People, like a lot of gamers, go to those events, and so I started going there for signings, and I went with Chris Casamassa a few times, who played Scorpion in the first Mortal Kombat. He's a good friend of mine, and so we would get that hangout time. It's fun. It ends up being a lot of fun, and you get to travel, and so it's pretty cool. And so that's the thing that's been really different about it. But I also think that, in the competition of movies, video games that were made into movies, I think Mortal Kombat rates really high at the top, and I'm really proud, especially of the first one, being in the first one, that something about that quality. And I think Paul Anderson had a lot to do with that. Yeah. I think, Robin Shou played a really good Liu Kang, and then, just had a lot of elements that just had a lot of elements that made it very, I don't know, cool. It's just a cool movie, and I still think it holds up today, Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a great movie. I love it.
Yeah.
After that, how soon was it after Uncle Fred called you again? Because Uncle Fred called you again for a TV series.
Yeah. What year was that? I can't remember if that might have been between, I don't know if it was between the 2 Mortal Kombats or if it was after. Do you have the date of it?
It was after. It was 1997. So it was kind of like the end of Annihilation and around that time.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story before you tell us. I actually got a phone call from Fred Weintraub, and he did the same thing as you. And he was on the phone, and he went, "Hi, this is Fred. Do you know anybody in England that can fight?" And I went, "Yeah, I think so. I know everybody. Yeah." And I'm going, I'll get back to you, Fred. I'm thinking, this is Fred Weintraub. I did go to interview him later on, but, just getting a phone call from, I think it was like Romania or something like that. And a call from Fred Weintraub. I was like, what? Tell us your little call from Fred. Go on.
Well, one of the funnier things that he said, he told me that, when he met his wife, she asked him, I think they were doing a yoga class. They met in a yoga class. That sounds really LA, but he was saying that he saw her and he just fell in love. And she asked him what sign he was, and his answer for that one was always slippery when wet. So anyway, he was a really funny guy, and he had a lot of stories because he went way back to the Woodstock.
Yeah.
He was working for Warner Brothers way back then, and he was one of the executives assigned to that movie, and so that's just, he has a lot of history with comedians and people in the music business. Yeah. So he's a really interesting guy. He never runs out of stories.
Yeah. So what did he ask you to do when you wanted to do the New Adventures of Robin Hood?
The first time I played a guy named Kobach or something like that, which was like he was supposed to be like a Mongol, like Genghis Khan,
Yeah.
And so I got to do a lot of like sword stuff and fighting, and I love doing accents and costumes because you can kind of get away from yourself, and so that gave me a real opportunity to play a character, which I feel like I did in King of the Kickboxers too. You you feel a little more free when you get away from yourself, and if you're doing an accent. And so I enjoy doing accents, and so I did that in that movie too. Yeah. And my teeth got all blacked out, just looked like rotten teeth, and just looked like a horrible guy, And so
where did you film that, Keith?
That was in Lithuania.
Lithuania, that's it. Yeah.
And that was great.
But you're moving right up to date now. Only a couple of years back. You are a Star Wars man now, of course. You are in the league of wanted people for Star Wars because you were in the Book of Boba Fett. Tell us everything about that. Come on, I need to know.
Well, I hope
Boba Fett is massive,
Well, let's see. So I got a call. Can you send in a from Diana Inosantos, Danny's daughter?
Yeah.
And I've been lucky enough to work with her a few times, more like on training. Like I was training Zoe Saldana to get ready for what is the movie, the big one with
Star Wars.
Avatar. It was for Avatar. And they were really serious about that because Garrett Warren, who is a very prominent stunt coordinator, hired me to train her. And I'm sure he would have done it himself, but he was just too busy, And so he does that for me sometimes when he doesn't have the time, and I get the opportunity. Like I also trained Rosa Salazar to get ready for Alita Battle Angel. And they get really serious about the training. Like I was training Zoe 6 hours a week.
Oof.
Wow. And the same with Rosa Salazar. And so it gets really involved, but back to Diana, I felt really happy that she called me, and I hadn't done anything for a long time, where I was actually in front of the camera. And she said they're looking for people that can do long staff. So I sent an audition. I hadn't even picked up my staff for years, but I just, I've done it so much that it sort of feels like riding a bicycle or something,
Yeah.
Get right back on. And so I just had my wife just film me doing the staff a little bit. I sent it to her, and they hired me. And
Wow.
so it was kind of a grueling, it was just a stunt thing. And I was one of those sand people. So we were in a costume.
Yeah.
We were doing like a ceremonial choreographed weapons presentation, and had to do it over and over and over again. And I was so glad that I was in good shape, because you could barely breathe. There's this little tiny breathing hole.
Oh, bloody hell.
And but Robert Rodriguez was there directing it, and I had worked with him before on Alita Battle Angel, and it was just good being around those people and feeling like I could still do it. It was a great feeling, and just to be in a historic series, a legendary,
You have been a Tuscan Raider, mate. You're up there now. You can't move away from it.
Yeah.
So anyway, just so to honor the lady who was put us in touch with you, Cynthia says she's had you have worked with her on Black Creek with her. Tell us all about that and how you got involved back with Cindy on Black Creek.
Okay, well, again, so somebody had dropped out. She had hired me for a really small part, and but she said it's good because you'll be able to be in the second one too, the sequel. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever, and then somebody dropped out of a bigger role, and she goes, Keith, I think I'm gonna have to ask you to do this role. And you know what? I loved it. I had so much fun playing a cowboy, obviously, which is, everybody's fantasy, I guess, for most guys anyway. Like I've been watching, Clint Eastwood since I was a kid, and, it just sort of gets, and John Wayne, it just sort of gets. And so I decided, so I'm half Japanese and half, Scottish. And my grandmother on my mom's side was actually from Scotland, and she has a Scottish accent and everything. But I pretty much play a white guy in this. So it was a bit of a stretch, and I did a Southern accent, which was so fun. I mean, it was just like I enjoyed it so much. I would go in my little trailer and I would practice, and I just love doing the character roles. And then I got to fight Don Wilson. I got to hang out with Benny Urquidez, and, working with Cynthia and Richard was like a bit of a China O'Brien reunion. Yeah. So it was just awesome. And my character, I don't want to give away too much, but he was a pretty complex character. And it was probably the biggest challenge I've had for acting so far since the beginning. So
wow,
yeah, I really enjoyed that challenge.
So Keith, where are we going from here? Have we got anything lined up now? Are we going to see you in something else soon, or are you just training other people?
Well, I've got an offer. I've got a couple of offers. Well, one is Black Creek 2. It looks like there might be something for me in that. And then there's the ones who made, I think it's called The Last Kumite. Isn't that what it's called? Yeah. In Germany. They're making a new movie, and they contacted me. And Keith Strandberg, who wrote King of the Kickboxers, is writing it. And so I think they might be writing a role, specifically for me in there. So that's cool. And so that's about it right now. Yeah, I mean, I've got those two things, two irons in the fire.
Have you ever thought, I'm not just throw this out, have you ever thought of putting because not many martial artists actually do it. Have you ever thought writing about what it's like to be in, a martial artist and then moving into the martial arts, movie world, and what that's like, and doing what else you've been doing by being pulled in to train people, so people who are actors are made to look good by people like yourself?
Yeah, I haven't really considered that. It's a good idea though. You know, could be interesting to a lot of people, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I've had a lot of fun doing that. You know, I did that movie Beverly Hills Ninja with Chris Farley, and he trained at my school. I had a school for almost 30 years, a martial arts school, and I love that, by the way, too. I love teaching, and it's like having a laboratory or something where you're experimenting on martial arts all the time, and you have these kids with their confidence in your hands. It's a big responsibility, you know, and I didn't take it lightly. You know, it was, you know, an honor to be able to do that. But Chris came and trained, and then Dennis Dugan, who directed he directed a lot of Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah.
But he would hire me to train actresses and actors after that too. So I've had a lot of jobs doing that. So it's interesting and fun, you know, to just meet these interesting people and train them, and you know.
What would you say to somebody who's aspiring to do martial arts and then would like to get into the martial arts movies? What would you say to them?
Well, you know, I think, you know, like they say, you know, being in the right place at the right time and stuff like that. The way that you end up being in the right place at the right time is by being there all the time. You know, it's just like, so you don't miss your opportunity. And I think that's been my experience in this is like, if you're there and because for a lot of years I haven't put myself back out there. Now I'm starting to again. Like I'm having my second childhood or something, and so you have to be present, and you can't take the rejection hard. You know, you just got to move on. You know, you got to believe in yourself. You know, and because not everybody's going to like you or want you. You know, and it's a weird. I think auditions are just really weird. You know, because you kind of you got to go in there and hope that these people like you, and at the same time you can't give a shit about it, you know, or you know, or you're going to be kind of nervous, or you won't be yourself because you want them to like you, you know. And so it's a weird it's just a unfortunate. I think it's like probably a lot of people feel like that when they're applying for jobs, you know, that aren't actors, just regular jobs in whatever their profession is, that you feel that pressure and you want them to like you and stuff. But for actors, man, I think it's really hard because, you know, and also all of a sudden, you know, you care more about how you look and stuff like that. So I think it encourages vanity and stuff like that. And, you know, kind of a self-centeredness that I don't like in myself when I start to feel like I'm getting like that, you know. I wanted to be you know, I have a 27-year-old son, and he was really into baseball way more than he was into martial arts, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I had to learn about baseball, and so that was part of why I didn't want to be running around going on auditions and stuff like that, because I really wanted to have that experience with him. I'm grateful for the baseball, man. I mean, that's why we're so close still. And so anyway, I think my advice would be, you have to be really committed. You gotta keep yourself centered. Don't let, you know, that self-centeredness or, you know, your ego get away from you, you know. It's a hard business, you know, in that sense.
Keith, thank you so much, but I still expect once you get out there to be doing that triple kick. I expect
if I'm I don't practice it right now.
I come to you, young man, and saying, why aren't I seeing you do that kick? I love that. When I see the Blu-ray, I shall go, I've spoken to Keith, and he told me exactly how that happened. So thank you so much for your time.
You have inspired me.
And also, what we're hoping is we'll hope to catch up with you soon, if and when you move into something else. That'd be lovely, Keith.
Great. So, thank you so much.